Welcome, everybody. I'm Stephen Long, and I'm a board member of the McMinnville Short Film Festival, and I'll be hosting this segment of Q&A. And I guess maybe one way to start is to tell you, well, congratulations. I was so impressed with your work. Fun that it's so diverse. Some, as the audience will see, are maybe more serious than others, but they're all just wonderful. So congratulations, just to start off. I'm going to sort of do two segments here in the sense of general questions that I want to have you guys talk about. Maybe not all of you the same question, but we'll kind of go around, and then some specific things about your film. So to get started, to be thinking about this, how did you come up with the particular topic of your film? And Richard, I want to start with you just because it's timely, it's serious. What exposure do you have to this that drew you to that topic?
Steve, thanks so much. I mean, the very plan of this movie was not necessarily ever thought of. I'm a journalist by practice. I was actually surprised that I would decide to try to do this thing. I respect filmmakers to a huge degree now that I didn't before, because I was driven to do 2-minute stories. That's what I do day to day over at NBC and MSNBC. And so when I ended up trying this journey 4 years ago, it was really driven by me caring for my father who has Alzheimer's, and he was diagnosed 8 years ago. I did not intend to become a filmmaker. I intended to bring more light upon those who give so much of themselves to care for family. And so that's what happened, is that, when I was traveling from New York to San Francisco over 7 years, when I hit year 3, and I was like, you know what? This country, our great country, needs to realize that one of the great things we can do is care for our family. And unlike other countries, other places, we can do it in great ways. And so began my journey to talk about student caregivers, those who are not what you see in the headlines, even when you understand what a caregiving family is like. So what started my journey was my father, who needed my help, and I decided to start working part-time instead of full-time, and go great distances to try to make a difference. Yeah.
Richard, thank you. You've actually inadvertently touched on two things that I want to come back to. But Colleen, you have a serious film as well. I suspect that geographically you're close to this. What brought you to that project?
I really think a lot of things brought me here, but two main things. Oklahoma is where I'm from and where the film is set, and Oklahoma has more man-made lakes than any other state. My grandfather worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, and he designed and built dams throughout the state. And as I got older, I started thinking about kind of the cost of that. And if anyone knows, Oklahoma was originally Indian territory. I'm Choctaw. My grandfather was Choctaw. So when all of these lakes started to be built, they were displacing mostly, and a large proportion, indigenous people who had already been displaced. That's why we were in Oklahoma to begin with. So I really wanted to explore what the cost of that was, and in a way explore the legacy of my grandfather's work. And I had been ruminating on this film idea for a while, and I met a journalist, another indigenous journalist. Her name is Allison Herrera, and she was doing a series of radio stories on Sardis Lake and the water issues. The film kind of touches on these, but it's much deeper than that. these water rights issues within the Choctaw Nation that deal with Sardis Lake and the larger Kiamichi River watershed. And so she and I paired up to make this short, which really is, it's meant as kind of a proof of concept for a larger documentary that I'm now working on that deals with those deep, generations deep water rights issues within the Kiamichi River watershed in the Choctaw Nation, and kind of dives more into a personal aspect, exploring that my personal connection via my grandfather's work.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it must be personal, as I suspect all of these are in one way or another. But Kendra, your topic is somewhat lighter, I would say.
Yeah.
Is this a relative? How did you come to make this? All right.
No, my story is about a woman who I met when she was 98. And I met her out in a bar. She was dancing, and I was immediately drawn to her because she's very gregarious and fun and just amazing. Yeah. And then I started learning more about her and found out that her dad was friends with Thomas Edison. She was born in 1920, and that she was the first woman drafter and worked on some things for World War II for planes, and drafted things for planes, and had this amazing life. And I was just like, I need to film you. Can I film you? Can I make a movie about you? And her family was so gracious and let me borrow her archive of photos, diaries, all this stuff. And I was so lucky to spend a bunch of time with her. She's still kicking. She's 100 now. Yeah, she's in lockdown. We had a big 100th birthday party for her. Everyone came and sang outside. She's sort of the patron saint of the Pagan Jug Band, this local band, and absolutely a delight working with her. And I'm so thankful that I got to film her and that everyone can get to know her.
So the one thing about her that I would question, when she says she's an introvert, I didn't see that.
No,
but she's
not at all. I mean, she said she was shy when she was really young. Maybe she was when she was a girl, but yeah, she's not an introvert, and she's absolutely a delight. I'm really happy I got to film her.
Yeah. Well, Abram, I think I know how you came to your project, but talk about that a little bit.
Oh, okay. I just got everyone like blinked on too, so that was kind of fun.
Oh,
good timing. Let's see. So originally this project came out of about 15 years of my work, culminating in an abbreviated kind of condensed version of what I've been doing in public schools on the West Coast. And this project—
So you are a teacher.
I'm a teacher and a teaching consultant. I work with Southern Oregon University and offer internships for pre-service teachers. And in order to create a real world experience for them, we I write grants and bring art programs to public schools, and then bring the interns into the schools. And basically, I call them teacher parties. We just saturate the room with adults and really lower the teacher to student ratio. That's the whole point, is just having one-on-one time with the young people. And so this class in particular came out of my nonprofit's response to the overload of school shootings in the United States. And we were looking critically at the depression and suicide rates in relationship to people trying to express themselves and basically, not feeling they had a place to put their voice and not a place that they belonged. So we wanted to create that.
Oh, it was very moving. Lynnette, I think I know your connection because your picture's at the end of the film. But so sounds like you came back to camp and how important camp was to you, but then obviously to everyone else.
Yeah, so I went to Camp Oasis many years ago. And it was the first time I had ever met other kids that had inflammatory bowel disease. So I think that's even part of why I kind of became a journalist, because it was like giving a voice to people who haven't necessarily felt comfortable, because it's not the most glamorous of diseases or subjects, and kids get really embarrassed. So I think journalism got me out of that embarrassment of like, story's important, your own story is important, getting that story out of other people is important. So then when I did my master's program, I've been working with IBD community for 2 years, and went to Camp Oasis out in Washington. So I got to meet kids that have been doing the same things I kind of had to do. And yeah, it was really amazing to work with these kids. And most of the volunteers are also part of the IBD community. It
looked like the instructors, the kids seemed so comfortable and having a great time, but the instructors seemed like they were having a ball too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they work with the YMCA staff. So there's like official camp staff, and then there's Camp Oasis volunteers who I think almost everybody, even the nursing staff and everybody, has either Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. So they're like living vicariously through the kids. They're like, we all have done the same thing.
Sure.
And they get to see the joy in the kids and that community coming together. And yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah, I think it helps to know you're not alone. You're not the only one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Stephanie, I have to tell you, when I saw your film, the thing that struck me, the way that I would describe it is, it's a visual poem. It was gorgeous, and it was so evocative. Do you live there? How did you come to this?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. This is my family's farm. So I did not grow up here. My mom grew up on the farm.
Okay.
My uncle still runs the farm. And has recently sold it to one of my cousins, and him and his family are going to continue it into the next generation, hopefully. But I did spend a lot of time growing up. I grew up in the valley here in Oregon, and so we spent a lot of time out at the farm, and it's a very special place to me.
Well, and if you can convey love in film, and obviously you can, you did that. That was very, very pretty, very beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Alex, when I saw your film, I thought, oh boy, is this timely and necessary? And let's hope we move past the problem, but the problem being discrimination. But how did you find this, come to it?
Yeah, sure. Well, and thanks so much for including me in this. It's awesome. I love this festival. Yeah, Chris's story came to me by way of my friend Robert, who works on the diversity and inclusion team at Nike. And we were talking about his advocacy work, Chris's advocacy work, and how he's trying to push forward legislation as far as the Olympic Committee is concerned, as it pertains to LGBTQ rights, but most pertinently transgender rights. And so Nike has a foundation that gave us a little bit of money to help tell Chris's story. And I've just always been drawn to people's stories, people that don't necessarily have a voice in the conversation, or are on the margins of politics, or just don't have a seat at the table. And so I have a personal connection with that, but it's also a mission of mine, I think, as a filmmaker to elevate these stories and to make them available to a wider audience. Right. So I think Chris's is powerful, and I think there's a lot to be gleaned. And I hope that we can move the needle forward a little bit, like you said.
Right. Well, and so like Richard, and really like some of the others, you've touched on something that I want to come back to. But Jennifer, I don't want you to get away. again, was it physical proximity? In other words, the geography? Is this family dynamic, or how did you know these people?
Yeah, these are my sons.
Oh, great.
So, the real spark, though, to specifically kind of come around and have the boys have a conversation with one another and talk about it is as my younger son was becoming more of a teenager, his older brother would yell at him and say, "Oh, you're such a teenager." And so for my older son, being non-neurotypical, it was kind of like this thing where being a teenager was a negative thing. And so I just thought it would be a great moment to have the two of them sit down and talk about their sibling relationship and how this dynamic of them changing as they are getting older, and the kind of differences that they're seeing now that maybe they didn't see when they were younger.
What I picked up from that was, if I had to summarize it in a word, it would be acceptance. It's just like, this is cool. You're cool. Everything's cool.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, August is August, and he's a wonderful guy, and we love him dearly. And there is that way where, especially being the younger sibling, you wouldn't notice anything different until maybe you started interacting more with other kids and so on. And it's a different perspective, really.
Okay. Well, you've all given me a segue into what I'm really interested in is what did you hope to accomplish with your film? In other words, is it a call to action? Is it just to shine a spotlight? Alex, like you said, maybe expose this or bring it to light. Richard, let me come back to you and what would you like to see happen? Well, in fact, this is only a part of a bigger project, right?
Right.
And so, and so with that, what would you like to see happen?
I guess we started by, if I go back to the treatment, all of us on this panel wrote some or cribbed something on a piece of paper, right? Like, this is what we want to do. And one of the things that I wanted to do was show joy despite difficulty. And I also wanted to show that, we should look deeper and ask deeper and listen deeper. So I think when you look at the Allen family in this documentary short, and the reason why we did documentary shorts before we did the feature was because I committed to every family that I would take their story to its ultimate end. I was not going to give up, basically. Me being a caregiver, all of them being caregivers, I promised that everything, and as a journalist, sometimes we helicopter in and then we helicopter out. Right. And I've been in many places like, the Bataclan massacres, the racial strife in Ferguson, where I'm in there and then I leave, right? But I told every one of these families, I'm in here from the beginning until the end, and now we're in year 3 for many of the families. And so what I was hoping to show was that when you look at these children, these students, that their stories are deeper than what we often allow ourselves to see. So when we look at them and we look at people, is that we need to spend one more beat to see to try to understand what they're trying to say. Like Darren in the short, when you look at her in the beginning of the short versus the end of the short, I think you see something different. And I think you see something that is truly inspiring and humanistic, and that will change your view on what we can be. So it's not only watching and watching more deeply, it's also asking and listening more deeply. Mm-hmm. I think we often will say, Steve, how you doing? But am I really asking you, Steve, how you feel? Am I really asking you how you are doing? Am I honestly, so when people ask me, like, how's your dad doing? Or how are you doing, Richard, taking care of your father? I actually take a beat myself to try to answer the most honest and open way, because the way that we can care about people more and better is to stop and listen better too, and ask better too. So I think to go like at 100,000 feet, when you ask me that question, that's the super highest level. The film itself is trying to show, well, this is the way you can understand what those answers might be.
Yeah. You know, in a sense, I think Jessica may have encapsulated that or capsulized it when she said the public, the people not directly involved, they see the injury of the soldier. But she said, who else does it affect? And there's the family, well, the ripple, and maybe it's bigger than the family, but it's certainly the family in addition to the injured person.
And is that not true of military families and civilian families? And I focused on military families because they bring it to us in a way that's so honest and so open. But in its reality is all of us are living through the very same journey, in that it is the entire system of parents and children, and how we decide, and how by the luck of the draw somehow do something great or difficult and try to run through it. And I guess during this, what I call a selfish pandemic, these student caregivers, these student care heroes, I think give us an idea of a future that is more hopeful than I think day-to-day news might tell us.
Yeah, well, they were strong and they were terrific. So, Abram, I'm going to shift over to you and ask, well, because of your film, what would you like to generate? What would you like to see come from this? Is it just an acknowledgement, or is it funding, or is it more programs, or what would you like?
Ooh, you said funding, and every part of my body just lit up. That's always the deal cruncher at the end, or deal breaker. And so I spent a lot of time writing grants in order to offer these programs to schools for free, because it's the missing piece right now. And we all agree that it's valuable, but there still doesn't seem to be enough funds. So anyways, bring the money. Next. Okay. This is an all call. The sense of belonging, the community experience, the resiliency that a lot of these students feel that they didn't feel whatsoever is the outcome. And I was actually thinking about that as I was listening to you, Richard. There's a moment in the beginning of class, and again, I usually teach 6 to 8 weeks. This is a 5-day workshop. The film itself is really a byproduct of the process. That's what I was thinking about before this call. And it's really about creating a safe space for people to, young people, to voice who they are and be seen and acknowledged for that. And then the rest kind of unfolds. So an analogy of a flower or what have you, you kind of give it all the right nutrients and then step back and not push and control as much. So we gave an opportunity for these young folks to show up in whatever way they could, as long as they participated. And to do that, we would film their shoes while they read their narrative if they didn't want to be on film. Or one of the students says, can you just film my hands? And another student, this was fun, we filmed her shadow as she was talking about her harder, darker places that she didn't feel vulnerable enough to share, but she wanted to have other people know that she felt similar to how she knew a lot of her peers felt. So yeah, summary is it's this gift, the sharing of yourself, giving permission for others to be themselves. And I have to come back to the depression and the feeling of isolation that a lot of people feel. I'm going to say a lot of people now with the pandemic. Sure. I think we get it more. Did that answer your question?
It really does. And I think in all of these, the self-motivation is probably compartmentalized, but I would think at some higher level, there's a goal. And I think that you've articulated that goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to speak directly to what I said in the beginning, this was a violence prevention workshop, and it turned into a self-expression workshop because the way to prevent violence is to sink into yourself and know yourself and communicate with others and, feel that sense of community. And then you're not wanting to get attention or, respect by bringing a gun somewhere.
Right.
It's impossible. If you're being heard, you don't have to wave your hands and scream and freak out already. So anyways, that's the point.
Completely agree. Lynnette, I wonder what you would like to see as a result of your film. And again, maybe it's exposure. Maybe it's just to let people know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little bit of both ends. So I created an entire website that has multiple stories from the community with the goal that if somebody got diagnosed and they're like, hey, what now? How do people live through this? Am I going to be okay? Can I live a normal life? They can go on the site and look at these like journalistic, real stories of people who have either been living with it for a long time or are recently diagnosed themselves. So yeah, a place for them to see people living life. You're okay. You're going to survive it.
Sure.
And then on the other end of that is to bring awareness to people who have never heard of it. Or if you got diagnosed and your grandma's telling you, well, just drink tea and you'll be fine. You won't be sick anymore. Like you can show like, hey, this is what the disease is about. These are other people who have had to deal with it. And yes, to kind of spread awareness.
It's a real thing.
People who have never heard of it.
Sure. And Colleen, I was thinking about you and your film. They're not going to drain the lake. What would you like to see happen? Just maybe not happen again?
Yeah, maybe not happen again. Right now, there's the state of Oklahoma has a permit to divert water from the watershed, from the river just below the lake. And a lot of people in Oklahoma aren't even aware of this.
Okay.
And I'm not looking at this so much as an advocacy piece, so much as an awareness piece. A lot of people that I've spoken to in Oklahoma don't even have any idea about the cost of these lakes or the people that have been affected. And I think it's really important that folks are able to speak out and recognize just within our own communities and our own state. I mean, this is an issue that the New York Times has covered, but that Oklahomans aren't even aware of. So my audience is really within my own state, but also I think people throughout the country. I mean, there's these man-made states, there's dams throughout the country.
Sure.
And there's been issues. I mean, I know of them in Oregon. And so it's really kind of a national issue that I think that a lot of people can relate to. And I think it's important to listen and to hear from people directly who are affected, who have been affected in the past.
Sure. I was thinking, you talked about Oregon or anywhere. Maybe it's not a lake, maybe it's a forest. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's, eminent domain, and then somebody has an idea and they think, I've got the power, I'm going to push this through, but at what cost?
Right.
Yeah. Stephanie, I think that you maybe are just sort of holding up your family and saying, I'm proud of you, or was there more to this than that?
Well, this is actually, I'm primarily an experimental filmmaker, and this is my first time making a documentary film. And I created this short version of what will be a feature-length film, just to kind of see what interest is in the project, and just to kind of get a feel of if I was on the right path. And more festivals kept asking me to send it around, and so it just felt like a good decision too. It is definitely kind of like a highlighting of my family, and specifically my uncle and his kind of lifelong dedication to this farm. He worked the land primarily by himself since the 1990s, when he bought it from my grandparents. So there's a lot of honoring family and legacy, but for me, I really wanted to kind of create kind of a meditative space for people who maybe haven't experienced a lot of time, being on a small family farm, and how important that can be to work with the land and understand where the land comes from. That's certainly a large conversation that I don't even get into in my short 10-minute film. But just kind of, there's a lot of things to kind of ruminate on, that I hope to articulate in this film for people who maybe haven't had that experience, and to give people a perspective of what struggles small family farms endure versus factory farms or industrial farming, and how I take serious concern with that business, I guess.
It seemed to me that on the one hand, it's a romantic notion, and it's a beautiful setting. And on the other hand, I was thinking the work never stops. They just, you're never off work, is what it seemed to me.
No, I mean, working a small family farm like this, there's no downtime. Well, there's a little bit of downtime, certainly in the winter months. My uncle, does some other contract work when he's not on the farm. It is a romantic notion, but I think I also kind of highlight, my uncle's using a lot of the original farming machinery and a lot of the original farming techniques that he inherited from my grandparents, that, a lot of that information and knowledge is lost when you sell multiple small family farms into larger factory farms or larger operations. And, just the ability to solve problems on your own, to tinker with machinery that, or have products that could last longer than 5 years, and to have things that are sustainable and, minimalist, I think is part of my message here.
Yeah, and I think you convey that. I noticed the age of the equipment, and just that it's practical, but it's not fancy.
Yeah, and certainly part of it's, being a small, independent farmer is not a lucrative business at all, but, making do with what you have.
Right. Okay. Kendra, when I was looking at watching your film, I thought of the book, The Delaney Sisters. Do you know about them?
Oh, yeah.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
And
my film wasn't really like a message film to start at all, because I just sort of fell in love with my subject and I wanted her story out there. But as I got to spend more and more time with her, I just kind of realized, we sort of ignore seniors. When we see them on the street, and we assume that they're not vital, interesting people that have led interesting lives, and this lady definitely changed that notion for me. But, at 98, when we filmed, she was still, she has a boyfriend that's 18 years younger than her. She goes dancing every week, and she's, she's sharp. She knows what's going on, and she's really a link to a past that's gone. She clearly remembers World War II. She clearly remembers the Great Depression and things like that, I think that by not having these conversations, and maybe, it's not just, have a random conversation with any senior citizen you meet, but maybe talk to your family more and get some of these stories, because I think that, to be really surprised at what you hear. And I mean, I was shocked. Like, all the things she was telling me, I was just like, you did what? And your dad did what? And you did what?
Yeah.
I mean, we could have made about a 12-hour movie, but I tried to distill it down to sort of more vignettes of her life, to sort of show how interesting she was.
So,
Phyllis.
I write fiction, and one of the things you want
Mm-hmm.
your characters, you want to imbue your characters with attitude, and that's what I thought about her. She's got attitude.
Mm-hmm. She does have attitude. Yes, she does.
Well, guys, Chris, I don't want to run out of time here. I want to see what you would like to have as a result of your project. I'm sorry?
Are you talking to me, Stephen?
I'm sorry, Alex. I didn't mean Chris.
That's okay. No, Chris is the subject.
Yeah.
Awareness, yeah, certainly, always. I think too, it's an interesting, so this project had a weird genesis in that it was sort of tied to the Nike brand, but not ever officially, really. And so I think awareness for sure, but I think it's also a step beyond, like myself, for instance, beyond my network, is holding brands accountable for, being diverse and having diverse hiring practices and recognizing the LGBTQ community, for instance. I had to not fight a lot, but I pressed a lot to actually get Nike to push this project afterwards, and I feel like it was worth it, because a lot of brands these days, especially now, sort of with what happened with Black Lives Matter and what's continuing to happen, brands often like to play in diversity a little bit, but then, I mean, maybe this is what you were sort of getting at, Richard, is like helicoptering in and out. You just can't do that. I think consumers are too smart. I think people that actually care and are living these lives of sometimes invisibility, that they're not stupid. You can't, as a brand, just dip your toe in and then say, okay, we're good. We've city card now. So I think it goes beyond even awareness. It's holding these big influential brands to the test, and really making them prove that can I curse on this? Is that okay or not? That they care about
people.
That they care about people as much as they say they do.
Exactly. Jennifer, I'm going to give you the last word. How about that?
Okay.
Would you like to have your film bring about some change, or again, is it just to honor your kids and for who they are?
Right. I think, again, in that way that they represent or at least my non-neurotypical son represents a kind of population that not many are familiar with or readily understand. And so just his ability to be self-knowing about what his autism means to him and how he has kind of worked through that, I think is really helpful for people who aren't as familiar with autism to kind of understand that, not everybody thinks of autism as an affliction. It's part of who he is.
It's a characteristic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, I just can't thank you enough. This, I'll share a little personal story here. I was asked to be on the board, and I love films, and I thought it would be great, so we did it. And then COVID hit, and many times during the year, I thought, what am I doing? Because I wasn't doing anything. And I told Nancy, when I saw your films, I thought, this is what it's all about. And it is. Thank you guys so much. Thank the audience. Get your tickets and watch more. And anyway, just thank you for showing up and doing what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Steve.
Bye, guys.
Nice to meet all of you.